Hello and welcome to the Birchal Podcast. My name is Emily McFarlane. I am your host. Today I am joined by Dennis Savic, who is the founder of Savic Motorcycles, which is a company at the forefront of developing electric motorcycles. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. It's just really exciting to have you on board. I've been following your journey for a while, and for those of our viewers who aren't familiar with what you do, I'd love for you to give us a little bit of an introduction into what Savic does and why it's so exciting, innovative and different.
Okay. I'll do my best to be concise.
You don't need to be concise. You can go absolutely all out if you want.
Normally when people ask me what we do, I just tell them, we just build motorbikes. Don't worry about it, because a lot of questions tend to follow. But basically we build high performance electric motorcycles. And yeah, I guess what's different about them is we like to differentiate ourselves on design and technology. And one of our core strategic advantages in the market, or whatever jargon we want to use, is on price, because we sell direct to customer only. We don't go through a traditional dealership network. So, but yeah, they're just super fun to ride, and it's a very small emerging market. So we think there's a lot of opportunity in it.
When did you start Savic Motorcycles?
Depends how you define start. I started building bikes 2015, so coming on nine and a half years.
Yeah.
And I started as soon as I finished my engineering degree, but I went to study engineering to do this. So it's just been like a long time coming. And yeah, we've basically built a bike every year, like iterated the design year on year. So yeah, just long time.
So why did you go down the route of electric bikes versus your traditional big, loud, petrol guzzling kind of bike?
So obviously, being pretty early on, the industry wasn't there. There was not really any electric cars, on the road at all. And so it was just a hypothesis at that point. And I hypothesized that the power of an electric motorcycle would be quite exhilarating. And I like to think I'm correct. Like, it really is phenomenal. But then what electric powertrains enable that combustion doesn't, especially in a motorcycle, is design freedom. And I'm quite passionate about design and styling and things like that. So, being able to start with an actual blank sheet and not need to start with an engine at the heart of it and design a bike around it, I found really appealing. And so, and I just thought it was going to be a future. I thought there would be a big gap in the market, and those hypotheses seem to be proving true. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so when you built your first motorcycle, what were the key elements that you wanted to include, and what was the actual outcome? I mean, was it successful?
No. I learnt a lot. So from that perspective, it was successful. But the first bike we built was a conversion. So we took an existing Yamaha R1. We took the engine out of it and the radiator and all the internal combustion powertrain out of it. And then we retrofitted a battery pack, an electric motor, and we actually took that for a bit of a ride. Which was super cool. And then we thought, we'll just do a ground up build now, and we'll put that powertrain in that bike. And we thought the powertrain was the hard part. But yeah, the chassis and all of the other systems in the bike are also quite difficult. So the second bike we built was a ground up bike, and that thing barely rolled. Because I did all the fabrication myself, and I wasn't, a trained welder or anything like that. So I learnt about, distortion through welding and all these kinds of things.
How did you even learn how to do that?
Just asking people and YouTube and failing a lot.
Checks out.
It wasn't really a success from that perspective, but there was probably, hundreds of lessons learned through each iteration that we've built. I think we've documented like 250 changes between each iteration of bike, and they started off being quite architectural, fundamental changes. And, the changes we make nowadays are tolerances and very, very incremental things. So we're getting there.
So how do you balance, making sure it's functional versus the aesthetics? Because I've had a look at the bikes and they're beautiful.
Thank you.
Where do you come from in that aspect, and what's the main priority?
So I worked at Ford, cut my teeth at Ford for a few years before I went full time, and so I was exposed to the automotive industry for a small amount of time, only a few years. But even in that time, it was pretty easy to observe the tension between design and engineering. And it's always a battle, or described as a battle, or, they've got to get the designers to agree to something, and the politics start to come into it. And I just looked at that and never really aligned with it personally. And so my philosophy is, if our designer wants something and it fits in the business case and we can afford it and what have you, that's what they get. And the engineers, do what the designers request. And if something's not possible, the engineers tell the design, like physically not possible, and the designers take that on board. And so it's just a much more collaborative approach. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I've strayed a little bit.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at it from, I've never ridden a motorcycle. I don't think it's a good idea for somebody like me to do that. I don't trust myself.
Why?
I'm too scared.
Yeah, you're a bit reckless.
So scared.
You're a bit reckless, aren't you?
Not reckless at all. Like, my risk appetite is about this big.
Okay.
And that's what scares me the most. Is it mostly a road motorcycle, or is it more of a racing motorcycle?
It's a road motorcycle. It's a commuter that has a good amount of power. And I say good conservatively. It's pretty insane in terms of what it can do. Top speed of 200 Ks.
Oh, wow.
0 to 100 in 3.5. It handles like it's on rails. It's honestly phenomenal. So, it's just a really, really fun daily commuter, or like a small weekend ride kind of thing. It's not a bike you'll take down to the Dandenong Ranges and, ride it for 8 hours and then ride home. It's just, the tech isn't there for that kind of riding yet. And a lot of our customers, they know that. But yeah, it's just a really fun, good looking bike.
How long does the battery last until it needs to be recharged?
Really depends on how you're riding it. So if you are on the freeway with no regen, about 150 Ks. If you are just around the city and you're doing a lot of stop-start, maybe 300 Ks. So we like to quote 200 Ks of range for the Alpha spec. Mm-hmm. So the bike itself, is called the C Series, and we've got two variants, the Alpha and the Delta. So the Alpha's the higher end one. So that one will do about 200 Ks combined city and freeway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the price point for your bikes? And what is the target market in that element?
Yeah. So the Alpha is currently $26,990, and that price is very likely going to increase at some stage soon, right away. And in terms of the target market, it's very hard to, using traditional demographics, outline who the customer really is.
Yeah.
Customer number one is a farmer, and customer number three is a CTO, and anywhere in between. And I think the common thread, 95 to 8% of our customers are male. It's a very male-dominated industry. Even our audience on Instagram, which is a 50-50 platform, is 80 to 90% men.
Interesting.
It is interesting. And our customers age-wise range between 35 all the way up to 65, 70.
Sounds like you're describing the Birchal audience
Am I?
demographic.
Okay.
We have exactly the same kind of numbers. That's really funny.
So yeah, and I think what everybody has in common is that they're passionate about bikes. They love the design, and maybe they're a little bit crazy, like me.
Are you trying to say that you're a little bit crazy?
I'm definitely a little bit crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be, I think.
I think to start a business, yes,
Yeah.
there's got to be a little bit of element of crazy.
For sure.
Because it is so much work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I recently had a chat on another podcast called MotoPG. They do a podcast on the MotoGP. And they're very non-PG, so it's a really good play on the words. And they follow the journey for a long time, and it's hard to understand why we've kept at it for so long. Like, it's been 9.5 years, and it's been a tough, almost decade. So I think you have to be a little bit crazy and believe in something that's really, really difficult to achieve to actually get close.
For sure. So if you look back at when you started building these motorcycles 9.5 years ago versus now, how has the electric motorcycle industry grown? Or has it, for that matter?
It has, but not very much. So even back when I started, there was a company called Zero Motorcycles out of the US, and I think at that time they were around Gen 1 or 2 of their product line. And but actually, I speak to the former CEO of that company every so often. He's a lovely guy, and
oh wow,
he's reinforced a lot of the things that we're doing as some of the mistakes that they've made in the past, and so it's quite reassuring. But there's kind of 3 competitors globally in our market.
So it's really small.
There's not a lot of competition out there, and that's because it's incredibly hard to break into. It is really expensive to get to a production-ready product. You need quite a lot of engineering capability, and if you want to innovate and develop new technology, it's quite expensive. And we've just managed to do it on a ridiculously lean budget.
I was just about to ask you that. How did you guys fund this?
I mean, up until 2020, this was nights and weekends for me and a couple of others. So we went full-time 4 years ago, almost to the day. And even in just that 4 years, we started developing. I'll take a step back. When we started, the plan was to buy off-the-shelf motors and batteries and other componentry and just assemble it into a bike and sell it as a product. And then we built our last prototype with that strategy in 2018 and rode it, and it was terrible. Like, it was not good. The power wasn't there. The quality of those components weren't there. They were overpriced because there's not a big supply of these components. It's not, they're not pumping millions, a year. So it's just expensive. And so with the reliability and the quality as well, we decided in 2018 we actually have to start developing our own. And so in 2019, we got a little bit more family and friend investment, and we built our first ground-up powertrain bike, and we launched that. And then our VC Artesian came to the party and said, actually, we think what you've got's pretty awesome. Can you get started, with a seed investment? And we raised a little bit more on top of that. And that was right as COVID hit. So, quitting a very secure job at Ford and giving it a go was pretty scary. But, to go from there to where we are now and actually engineering our own motors and our own battery packs and our own power inverters, all the software on the bike's us, all the cloud infrastructure's us, the rims, axles, nuts, brake discs, it's all done by us.
I'm nodding like I know what these parts are. I've got no idea.
It's just basically 95% of the bike is done by us, and when I say us, there's a team of 9 full-time and 20 other individuals, contractors and sweat equity type people who are all contributing. And, we've just all chipped away at it for years, and that's how we've done it, and gotten a product to production with 5 million Australian. It's just completely unheard of in the auto industry to have done that. So I'm really proud of the team.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about it from that perspective, that you're doing something that's completely new, that's never been done before, and you're doing it with such a small amount of capital.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
I wouldn't even know where to start. So when you were trying to get external funding from Artesian, how did you go about that? How long did it take? What were the kind of conversations you were having?
So I think Artesian are probably the anomaly in all of my capital raising efforts, especially from a VC perspective. I think they could see what few others could see in terms of the opportunity. I think they also backed it because I was willing to risk massive reputational damage by slapping my name on the thing.
Yeah, great.
So they thought that was quite ballsy and saw it as an indicator that I just wasn't going to quit. And so, they've supported us every round. And capital raising has been really difficult. I mean, hardware is hard to execute, and raising capital for that's probably even harder. But then when you have a product with 250 individual components, we're assembling locally, it's a niche that not many investors are comfortable with, and comfort factor is really important in terms of getting investment. I don't think we will be looking for institutional investment in Australia once we start to grow. I think the real investment will come from overseas, and it's really quite unfortunate. There's a lot of talk in the investment community around how they should be backing Australian companies, and it's such a shame that companies have to go overseas for funding. But if you can't get investment here, you've just got to go somewhere else. And so crowdsource funding has been awesome for us. Like, it really has been. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to support us, and every little bit goes a long way. And like I said before, we've done so much on so little. So crowdsource funding is really good.
Yeah, and I think you're growing your kind of base of ambassadors, fans, people who love what you do and want to see you succeed. So they're always going to put their all behind actually amplifying your voice, which is such a positive. So I know that obviously you're doing the electric motor behind the motorcycle. Can you elaborate a little bit on the sustainability elements of your bikes?
So sustainability obviously in our space is an important consideration. For us, it's been more of a byproduct than an objective.
Right.
We are motorcyclists predominantly in the team, and thrill seekers and adrenaline junkies, and the fact that it's electric is just a bonus. And so in terms of sustainability, we really look at the recyclability of the product at the end of life. And that's why we decided to use aluminium for most of our structural elements. So aluminium versus steel is just highly recyclable. In fact, there's a certain percentage of recycled aluminium in our products. It's just kind of the way the industry works.
Okay.
And so, I mean, with the battery pack, that's a pretty common question. What happens to the battery after 10 years, when you potentially need to replace it. And so we have plans to basically build a second product that takes pre-used battery packs to build home energy storage systems. So because battery pack size is about the right size for a home, and end of life for a vehicle certainly doesn't mean end of life for home energy storage. They're just very different power demands on a battery pack. So how
did you come up with that?
It's just I don't know. When you're in that industry, you're looking at everything all the time, and a battery's a battery, and the chemistry is the same, and it's the only thing that really needs to change is the battery management system and how they're connected. So it's not rocket surgery.
Okay, that's interesting. So the motorcycles essentially have an expiry date, would you say? So the battery pack in it does, and that needs to be replaced after a certain amount of time?
Look, I don't think I'd call it an expiry date because the way we've designed it, so the phenomena that happens with battery cells is after a certain number of cycles, the capacity will go from 100% to 80%.
Right, so you look at your iPhone, for example, it just doesn't stay charged for as long as it used to when it was new.
Correct. It's a different chemistry. I think after a few years, the iPhone kind of might go to 50% or potentially even less. But with our chemistries that we use, they basically test these cells, and after 1,000 cycles, they drop to 80%, and then they stay at 80% until 5,000 cycles, and then they stop testing because it doesn't depreciate as quickly anymore.
Okay.
And one cycle is an average range of 200 kilometers. So if you've got 1,000 cycles where it goes from 100 to 80% capacity, in theory, you're doing 200,000 kilometers.
Wow. Okay.
But on a motorcycle, you don't normally put that kind of mileage on your bike. So it's depending on how you ride, and if it's a long daily commute or a short daily commute or a weekend ride every second weekend or something. So, in theory, it's the life of the bike as long as the battery's looked after. So to kind of ensure that, we designed our own instrument cluster that's cloud connected. Because that wasn't available in the market off the shelf, so we had to develop it ourselves.
How does that work?
So it's like a touchscreen LCD on the front of your bike for the dash, and there's just some electronics behind there with a SIM card in it, and we use AWS as our cloud backend, and it feeds data to the cloud, and we keep an eye on everyone's bike that'll be in market, and so if something happens, or certain battery voltages drop below a certain level, we can notify them or call them, or just kind of preventative maintenance type stuff. So just doing things that minimize that risk of, you've had a failure, now you've got to replace the battery pack and it's an expensive service. And but I think that there's enough safety algorithms in the vehicle that we don't forecast a lot of battery issues, but I mean, touch wood, right?
So with the technology that you've got integrated into the bikes, where do you see that progressing? And do you see that as a key differentiator between you and any competition that are in the market?
So yes and no. When we get asked by investors, what patents have you got and what have you, and what's stopping someone else from developing what you've got, there's nothing really stopping anyone with enough capital to develop what we've developed. It's just not overly common at all, I don't think. Over-the-air updates we've done and developed ourselves, and there's not a lot of OEMs that have it. The automotive industry is really cutthroat in terms of cost. And so if you have to increase, a part cost by $10, it's almost a board level consideration in some.
Really?
Yeah, huge. So, working at Ford, every 20 cents, 50 cents was accounted for in the car. It's really granular. And I mean, especially with a high volume producer, it adds up very, very quickly. But so for us, we're relatively low volume. It's less of a consideration. But the reality is, because it's not common and it's more expensive to do it, people aren't producing it already. So we had to develop it ourselves. And I think the barrier for other people doing it is the unit cost, which we're already bringing down over the next 18 months. So, yeah.
So do you think that your background working at Ford has shaped the way that you run your business as a founder?
100%. I think it was really bittersweet leaving there because I loved working there. The engineering director at Ford that was there at the time that I was there, Ron Collins, he's now a really good friend and a mentor, and we catch up once a month. And I think we just clicked because we're both a little bit nuts. And, I learnt so much from so many different departments there, and watching and witnessing how things operated. Some things I loved, some things I really didn't agree with. And it just was a great way to think about how I want our business to grow. And, the design and engineering side, for example, I just said, well, I've seen how it works in industry. And that's not just Ford. I mean, that's really common in, globally. So we just want to change that. We don't want to do it that way. And so, but then other amazing things like accounting for every 20 cents in the vehicle, and I was a weight engineer. So, engineering the center of gravity locations, basically how the bike's balanced and where it's located. That was invaluable because it's one of the best pieces of feedback we get on our bike. It handles like a dream, and that's largely due to the center of gravity and the suspension, which was developed by a superbike rider. So that's just a phenomenal piece of equipment.
So when you say that part of it was developed by a superbike rider, was that a key element in creating the bikes? Is testing it out on actual users and people who have experience riding bikes and seeing what they're looking for when you're producing a bike? Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people assume that because I'm the founder, I'm biased towards the product, and it's actually quite the opposite. I'm quite critical and see all the flaws in what we have done, even if they're not actually flaws.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so 18 months ago, we had 4-5 journalists ride our previous generation prototype to give us our feedback and do a bit of a write-up. And since then, like some of the componentry, the suspension we couldn't find off the shelf. No one wanted to supply us because we're low volume. So we thought, right, we'll just develop it ourselves. And we did. We found a no-name manufacturer, developed a tune with a superbike rider, and we now have our own suspension on the vehicle, and it handles way better than anything available off the shelf because it's fit for purpose. And so, yeah, we actually had our very first customer, so customer number 1, test ride a bike for the first time yesterday, and it was very emotional. It was,
really?
Yeah, he was just in tears. Everyone was in tears. He was blown away. He just couldn't believe. And I think we actually limited the torque to 60%, and he was blown away by the power and how smooth it is and how amazingly balanced it is and easy to handle it is. So he's just, very, very happy, which is a big relief.
That's incredible. So with these iterations, how often are you creating new prototypes and newer, better versions of the bike?
We've virtually iterated year on year. From a full vehicle perspective, I think iterations never stop. Even once you start production, there's constant improvement that happens, and not necessarily just in the bike, but in the supply chain, in the assembly process. A new part might be added to make the assembly process simpler. So yeah, like R&D and development never really stops. As we get bikes in market, I mean, we've done pretty extensive testing on the bikes, and we've communicated virtually our whole journey to our customers to keep them informed as to what's happening and why we're doing certain tests. And, we think that we've broken everything that might break on the bike, but the reality is, and statistically, there's going to be other issues that surface once we've got, 20, 50, 100 bikes in market. And then more iteration will be required, and we'll refine that, and then we'll scale a bit harder.
So in terms of putting your bikes out to the market and with these new iterations year on year, what is the B2C sales process in actually getting customers on board who do purchase the bikes?
So we've got a bit of a different sales process. So we're completely online. All of our orders came through online. And if someone's seriously interested in a bike, there's $100 expression of interest that someone submits online.
Okay.
And so on our website, there's a configurator. They design the bike, they submit their interest, they pay the $100. And then we have a call with them. And on that call, we talk about timelines, options, what's available, what's not available, performance, expectations, what have you. And then if they want to lock in a number or put a full deposit down, it's another $1,900, so $2,000. And that's fully refundable. So that sits on the liabilities part of our balance sheet.
Right.
And we don't ask for anything else until we start ordering the parts for that bike. And then it's a $4,000 progress payment. And normally we ask customers if they're willing to put more down sooner, if they're comfortable with it. We generally leave it up to them. $4,000 is the minimum requirement. And then at that point, the total $6,000 is no longer refundable. And from that point, final payment prior to delivery. And that's it.
So it's literally made to order.
Yeah,
every
correct.
single bike.
Correct. It's built to order. We don't have a huge amount of customizability yet. There's like a few different color options, and there's a couple more options that are coming out over the next 6 months. But because we're a relatively small team, production complexity can be really expensive. So we've kept it pretty simple. But yeah, people seem to really like it. We've got, I think, 240 odd pre-orders now, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's it's 12 to 18 months of just production at full capacity at the moment that we have in the pipeline. And I think that there's a lot of people just waiting for test rides and for customer testimony before they actually pull the trigger on a deposit. So it's a really exciting time.
So for people who do want to try it out for themselves, is there the opportunity to do that?
Yes, so there will be very soon. I think my CMO will kill me if I say a date, but we're looking at the next month or so to start customer test rides here in Victoria. We're going to have a test ride bike available in WA, and then up the East Coast, the team will travel city to city and offer some test ride events. So
amazing.
We've got a bit of a plan, but that's, it's going to be over the course of the next 6 months that'll all really eventuate. But obviously, as customer test rides happen, we'll blast the socials and send out all the newsletters and stuff. So.
And where do you make the bikes at the moment? Are people able to go to your facility and see how it all comes together?
So we have had a few people come through the factory. It's in West Melbourne, kind of like North Melbourne area. It's just a small 200 square metre pilot factory, if you will, capacity of 20 bikes a month kind of thing. So it's like a sub-assembly area and a final assembly area and a QC area and stuff like that. We have had people come through, but it's only very early customers that we've really done that for, or investors. And simply because we're a small team, we just don't have the capacity to bring everybody through who would want to come through. But yeah, in time, I think more structured factory tours, we'd love to do it. I think people love seeing it. We don't manufacture the components ourselves, so we design, engineer everything. We outsource component manufacture to about 40 suppliers globally, and then we bring everything in separately and assemble the bikes ourselves. So, it's a pretty cool operation to see it like all happening.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got people blowing up your phone, knocking down the door, trying to get in, trying to see what you're doing. And I think it's really exciting, and particularly an exciting space for people who are really enthusiastic around motorcycles and what the future looks like in terms of an electric vehicle perspective. So I think it's really exciting, and I personally am really looking forward to seeing how it all comes about. I think it's such an untapped market, and to think that it's coming from Australia is really huge.
Well, we'll do our best.
No, we trust you, of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today and coming on and chatting with everybody. We're so excited to see how you go on the Birchal platform.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.